Good Wednesday evening, everyone. This is another Carolina's Weather Group discussion, and tonight our topic is talking about the social science and social media impact on weather. And who better than to have two of the best meteorologists in North Carolina to kind of discuss that topic tonight with Brad Panovich and Grant Gilmore. I would go ahead and apologize to everyone who's watching us. We're all a little sleep deprived, so if we look red in the eyes or something like that, that's why. It's been a heck of a past 24 hours throughout the entire state of North Carolina with severe weather that was ongoing yesterday. And I asked Brad this question yesterday on a Facebook chat. Maybe he knows the answer, but 17 consecutive hours of a tornado watch for the western part of North Carolina. It has to be some kind of record. I don't know. We keep records like that, but it's got to be something like that. But anyways, I'm sure we'll talk about that tonight. But I'll go ahead and toss it around to our regular panelists, and then we'll introduce our guests, and we'll start with our topic. And I'm going to toss it over to Joey in Catawba County, who had a little bit of excitement yesterday.
We did. We had a tornado warning. It of course it went right over my famous little corridor of Highway 18 and Highway 10 intersection, and then it sort of recycled a new wall cloud and funnel over into Burke County. So we sort of got all excited, and everybody got ready, and everybody got prepared, and then it sort of skipped us to the left a little bit, a little shift. But so from what I've been able to tell, we had really no damage whatsoever here in the county. So we pretty much dodged all that. I think it actually was much windier last night during the severe thunderstorm warning than it was during the tornado warning earlier in the day. So it was exciting for nothing. So we kind of got by. I'm sure there's a few limbs and trees down, or little Bradford pears around the county, but that was about it. Now Ricky was actually out chasing, I believe, yesterday. Ricky, did you get to see any excitement?
We saw a turtle in South Carolina. That was about as exciting as it got down in the raininess of Columbia for a while. Yeah, the storms we went after. We got out late, and I didn't want to go anywhere near Joey's house because mountains. And I just didn't really make it over there. But we went down to Columbia and then came back north eventually after realizing the storms were moving in a little more stable air. But we got a few pictures on the live stream back, so it worked out okay, I would say. But other than that, we had a shelf cloud move across the campus of UNC Charlotte around 11:20 or so last night was when it came through, and it was a pretty nice shelf cloud from what I understood. I wasn't here. I was at the station with Brad helping out a little bit, and then they said the shelf cloud, quote, was so low they felt like they could touch it out here on campus. So nice with low LCLs, how it made it look pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. And Daniel's not here, so I'll go ahead and he was the big winner last night. Actual tornado did touch down in McDowell County. This was just issued a couple hours ago, and a guy that I work with, Chris White, was up with McDowell Emergency Management, the National Weather Service, and they did confirm a EF0 tornado that touched down 10 miles south of Marion, near the Montford Cove area. The maximum winds was 75 to 80 miles per hour. The path width was 350 feet, and the path length was about a half a mile. Preliminary information was relayed from the survey team. So an EF0 tornado did touch down in McDowell County, and then as most of you guys know, I cover Burke County, and we also do Caldwell County. So we had a little bit of excitement yesterday around the 2 o'clock area with several funnel cloud reportings, and one that looked like in Granite Falls. I mean, it was really close to touching the ground, and I would love to see if there's any tree damage in the forest behind the Walmart, because it came awful close to touching the ground. And that's where I'm going to hand it off to Mr. Panovich, who covers the entire western part of the state, and he can give us a better idea of what happened, more of a regional area.
Yeah, it certainly was a long day yesterday. That morning tornado watch was kind of weird. I thought it was, a little presumptuous to issue that watch till 2 o'clock in the afternoon with the line still back in parts of Georgia and Tennessee. And I think what you saw later in the morning, really early afternoon, when they kind of scaled it back and kind of threw people off because they thought, whoa, this whole thing's moving in quicker. But in reality, what happened, the main line actually came through pretty much on schedule. We had those several tornado warnings, as you guys alluded to. All these funnel cloud reports. I mean, that Granite Falls one was pretty good, but even down in like Mooresboro and Ellenboro, all the way down to Boiling Springs, South Carolina, I got a ton of wall cloud and funnel cloud pictures. But looking at the pictures in the video that we did get, it looked awesome, but there was very weak rotation. The one wall cloud we saw looked really massive, but and here's the thing for spotters out there. Just because you have a lowering and you have a wall cloud, the amount of rotation in it really is going to dictate whether or not you're going to get a spin up. So it was really a weak looking system, but I am curious, like you guys are, for a long track of that at least that one cell that had strong rotation on radar, it was over a lot of rural areas, a lot of wooded areas. I'd be really curious too to get back in some of these areas and kind of see if there are some trees down, because if it touched down, it's likely it touched down in an area where nobody lives, and there would be some trees down. But then what happened later in the evening, we had the tornado watch, the second tornado watch, which got extended to 1 o'clock in the morning, and all these little mesovortices along this what we call a QLCS or a line echo wave pattern kind of squall line. None of them ever really produced much in the way of tornadoes. I thought it was kind of interesting talking to the Weather Service guys down at GSP, and I think they commented at one point like we could have issued like 40 tornado warnings and probably verified one, because there was nothing happening. It was all off the surface. But we did get pretty gusty winds, 30, 40 mile an hour winds here in Charlotte, and really heavy rain. I ended up with over 1.25 inches at my house here in South Charlotte with that line, which once it got to Charlotte around midnight, it kind of stuck there until 5 o'clock this morning. And then wake up this morning and you end up with the front off to the east, cooler weather, and then some late day thunder showers, which were kind of interesting up your guys' way, moving through the mountains and foothills with really cold air aloft. Those are my favorite kind of little pop-up instability showers. We had a bunch of positive strikes, and I think at one point it was a thunderstorm in Boone at 49 degrees, which is always fun.
Yes, most definitely. And Brad, it works for NBC Charlotte for those who are new to the show. And then we're going to toss it over to Grant Gilmore, who is more in the central part of the state. And Grant, what was it like last evening for you guys?
You know, it was kind of a little less interesting than what you guys had, you know, and even though it wasn't that interesting for you guys, you know, we sat there and we watched the tornado watches come and go and just watched a lot of the weather dissipate as it moved into the triad. We had that watch that was in effect, and then, you know, some of the counties were dropped, and then they extended the watch until 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were sitting here watching the whole thing like, this isn't going to happen. You know, it just looked less and less like we were going to see that severe weather. But it was interesting, you know, coming in, I guess it was around midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, we had this gust front coming through, and it really didn't look like much on radar, but as we got more reports coming in, it was like 40, 50 mile per hour winds, you know, moving through Winston-Salem and through Greensboro, and we did have a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings up in Stokes and Rockingham County, but that was kind of with an actual kind of a line of storms that was moving through, but this little gust front that was moving to the triad was packing a pretty good punch. And actually, I still have to call back some viewers, but there were some viewers that were upset that we, and by we I mean the National Weather Service, didn't issue any sort of warning on that gust front because, you know, these guys in the trailers were saying we were getting knocked around pretty good and didn't really know about it. So it was interesting to see that because it really wasn't all that impressive, at least on the surface, so to speak. And then, you know, once that little gust front moved through, we just were left with some pretty heavy rainfall overnight, and you know, around kind of an inch generally around the whole triad of rain fell by around 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. It was all out of here.
Yes, and it was. I was trying to get the mute button off. Yeah, it was kind of died down as it came across the state. So a good practice run for everyone with the severe weather, and I'm sure we'll see a couple more episodes before severe weather fall season is over with. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ricky, and we will start the main portion of our show.
All right. Thank you, Scotty. And our topic tonight is social media and weather, and perhaps two of the best people here in the state of North Carolina to talk about this, Brad Panovich and Grant Gilmore, are joining us tonight. Let's go ahead and start off just kind of really saying if social media played an important role yesterday in your severe weather coverage to either of you. I'll give that to Brad first because I know we got some pictures coming in.
Yeah, actually yesterday was kind of was all we had with social media, to be honest with you, because of where this storm was, the tornado warning in particular. I'm talking Cleveland County, Rutherford County, Burke County, Catawba County, up into Alexander County, the counties that in Caldwell County that affect my viewing area. We had a crew in Hickory, but we had another crew in the Shelby area. But the visibility was horrible. These were the LCL yesterday, which is the base of the cloud base, was like on the floor. You're going to have a tough time seeing these yesterday unless you are right on top of it. Luckily, our spotter group, as well as social media, came through for us, and we've got tons of those funnel cloud pictures and even video, which the video was awesome because I was able to get that video on the air while we were doing live tornado coverage, especially from the Shelby Falston area. And I think that the key part of that is, one, that's great for us to get that information on the air, but I really think it played a huge part with the folks up in Burke, Caldwell, and Catawba County, because we were able to show this stuff on the air and kind of share it online via Facebook and Twitter, that the school systems up there say, hey, whoa, this isn't just a radar issue. We've got pictures of funnel clouds and rotation on video. It really lend itself to the people downstream or down track of the warning to take it even more seriously. And so a lot of times people think, well, why are you always asking for pictures and video, and why are you guys showing this stuff? Because in many cases, the social science will tell you that the viewer, the public, will respond much better to seeing a tornado than looking at the radar or me telling you that there's a tornado warning. It's this confirmation thing that people have to go through. If I tell you that your house is under a tornado warning, we have found that through social science, the first thing you do is you try to go confirm it with a neighbor, with a friend, go look out and actually see the tornado. People just don't go to shelter based on, they need multiple sources of confirmation. And the great thing about social media is that it speeds up that process. We know it's a human condition. You're going to want to confirm the threat with people that you trust besides the guy on TV. And in the old days, that used to be talking to your neighbor, maybe picking up the phone and calling. Now it's hopping on your smartphone and looking at Facebook and Twitter and see the people you follow saying, hey, yeah, there is a tornado warning. There is a picture here to your south. And it really gets people to speed up that process of actually seeking shelter. So for yesterday was a good example where it was huge for me in particular and for our station, because we were like the only ones that had the video on air in real time. And just from a TV standpoint, that's great, but from a public awareness standpoint, it was even bigger.
It's really interesting, Brad, talking about how you were able to get all that stuff on the air as it was happening, collecting it through social media, whereas here in the Triad, we were doing a lot of retweeting of that stuff, saying, hey, here's what's happening in the western part of the state. This is what's going to be coming our way. And the thing that was really interesting is, because it was moving so slow and social media moves so fast, a lot of our followers on social media were like, why isn't it here? By the time we got to our 5 and 6 o'clock newscast, they're like, you showed us these videos and these great pictures of funnel clouds out in Hickory, at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. Why isn't it here in the Triad at 6? And that was really the hard message to convey, was, hey, this system is moving very slowly, and on top of it, it kind of fizzled out on top of it. So that made for a difficult situation, but it's interesting how yesterday really seeing that social media moved faster than the weather was actually moving, for us at least, specifically here in the Triad.
Yeah, we got a lot of that as well, Grant, that even after the 11 o'clock show, I had people in Monroe, eastern part of my area, is this ever going to make it here? And, because you're looking at it all day, and it was interesting that individual cells along the line were moving north at 45, but the whole line, I bet, was maybe moving 5 to 10 miles an hour, if that. So here you are tracking a storm within the line moving 45, but the whole line itself was moving east at only 5 to 10 miles an hour. And it really took until about midnight for areas east of I-77 to get it. And once it got there, it was pretty good. As you mentioned, we had that little gust front come through as well, and it wasn't a cheapy little system. Thankfully, it didn't produce a lot of damage, but it just took all day. People woke up to a tornado watch, and a lot of them didn't really get the weather till they went to bed the following evening, which is, it was kind of rare for us to see that. Plus, you throw in the fact that we, for days on TV, you're showing all the stuff going on in Arkansas and Tennessee and Alabama. And that morning, I think there was like 7 tornadoes touched down in the Atlanta market down in that area, northern Georgia. So, you're playing this up, and sometimes people expect it to happen within hours, and it took almost a whole day for it to actually happen.
Yeah, one thing I was gonna say, talking about that, we downplayed it a lot here that we didn't have a lot of severe weather, but we got to realize that we were really close to that being a pretty serious outbreak. I mean, we were lacking very few ingredients of making that a pretty serious deal yesterday.
Oh yeah, you guys know how it is. These high shear, low cape events. I mean, these are the ones they drive you nuts because there's no lightning. I mean, there's no thunder and lightning with any of those storms yesterday, but the radar signatures are impressive, and just the environmental winds. That southerly low-level jet was cranking. Guys up in the mountains, Watauga, Ashe, Avery County, they had trees falling all over the place just from the straight line non-thunderstorm winds, and you throw in 4 or 5 inches of rain. We were really close to getting something to spin up tomorrow. So there's a lot of times I try to cut down on the false alarm rate. I'm okay with what happened yesterday with amping things up, and people probably a little disappointed or maybe happy that nothing happened, but that's a situation where the warnings would have been short fuse anyways, so we would have wanted people to react pretty quickly, and it's not like it was early in the spring when we were expecting the epic outbreak and we got wedged in and squashed by storms to the south and cut off all the flow. This was a little different situation. Just nothing really made it down to the surface, which was a good thing yesterday, and I think the public sometimes has to realize that it's okay if we don't get severe weather when we forecast it. That's a good thing. I know you think we blew it, but it's a good thing when that happens.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo that too. Certainly here in the Triad, we were building it up too. Here we had staff coming in, we had meteorologists coming in to bridge the gap overnight, we had extra production crew, and then we come into Wednesday and everyone's kind of going, looking around like, well, what happened? And it was like it was so close to having it be necessary that we did have all these crews and all the coverage ahead of time on it. And they'll say, oh, we dodged a bullet. Well, the weather still happened, and there was still certainly severe weather, and being an overnight event, I'm perfectly fine with amping it up a little bit and maybe going a little overboard, because if you don't mention it and you pull back the horses a little bit and then it does happen, that's a big problem. So you always want to be over-prepared in a situation like that, especially overnight.
Yeah, there was a lot of success stories yesterday. Guys in Burke County can attest to this. The schools, I was so happy to see schools keeping students at school extra 30 minutes, not getting them in the buses right when the storm was moving through. Everyone heading to their shelter locations. Schools were on lockdown, which we kind of think of lockdowns for shooting situations, but everybody was in a safe spot. I was really happy to see that because having worked in the Carolinas now for almost 12 years, the one thing I talk at a lot of schools I'm still frustrated with is the lack of preparedness by some schools for severe weather. We have so much emphasis on mass shooting situations and safety at schools. Sometimes I wonder if we're taking attention away from severe weather safety, which is a much more probable instance of occurring at a school than a mass shooting. So I was really happy yesterday. If there's one success story, was to see the way the schools reacted in our viewing area and really not panicking and sending kids home early and getting them in buses in the middle of this, which would have been the worst case scenario, but keeping them in school a little bit longer, because some of these schools, that's some of the best protection you're going to get in these big cinder block schools, as opposed to some of these families and kids who go home to manufactured mobile homes.
It's interesting, Brad, that you say that, because Tim Buckley and I were sitting here yesterday going, this sort of feels like a winter weather setup. It's just in the way that we kind of prepared for it internally. And, that's probably a good thing that you said that about those schools, because maybe the schools do need to look at it, severe weather, very similar to the way that they prep and plan for winter weather, holding buses longer, maybe taking kids home earlier, depending on the way things look. It's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, and to just go off of that, I can think that Joey can give you the numbers for Catawba County, but there was about 10 schools that were affected here in Burke County, the eastern part, with the funnel cloud moving over. And Brad and I are really familiar at the one school, George Hildebrand, where the funnel cloud passed right over the school. We got a picture of that, and that area was actually affected by a tornado just a couple of years ago. So I know for that area, I have local ties to it, and they were prepared for whatever was going to happen.
Well, yeah, that's our tornado alley, Scotty. I mean, we actually joked about that on the air yesterday, because I think in some ways the people that live in that corridor are kind of already. I watched one video sent to my Facebook page. It was 5 minutes long, and it was a rotating wall cloud, a little funnel cloud over the little rise, and I could hear the commentary of this lady and her husband. Oh, the one 2 years ago went this way, and the one 3, and so this is an area that gets a lot of tornado warnings, and they were basically comparing it to the other tornadoes. So I think those people are kind of very weather aware to begin with.
Yeah, they are, and especially when you pump up a severe weather event that's likely to happen. There's some people around here that really take that serious, as Joey knows. His favorite Highway 10 and Highway 18 corridor.
It verified again, didn't it? But you know what you're saying about the schools in Catawba County, and I know we're a little off topic here, kind of, but the entire county, they covered every school went on lockdown. So even the ones which were well away from that warning in the eastern part of the county, they even went to their tornado places and stayed down for the entire length of the warning. So they didn't pay attention to the new polygon warning. They said Catawba County, that means all of us.
I had someone ask me earlier yesterday afternoon, though, how we reach out to people with these nighttime impacts. And I think, one of the things that really has taken over the past couple of years is the social media. Because even if you're not watching 11 o'clock news, even if you haven't watched the news in the past 3 days, you're still going to know probably what's going on, because someone in your timeline is likely going to tweet the word tornado or storm or something, and it's going to catch your attention. And I really think that social media over the past couple of years has taken off and kind of almost taken the place of news break-ins to a certain extent. Grant or Brad, would you agree to that?
I would agree. I think the one thing about social media, especially in nighttime situations, and this goes back to when I first really got heavily into Twitter back in 2009, was when I started doing updates in the middle of the night when we have no viewers. Let's be honest. There's infomercials on, and whatever that crazy sports show is we seem to have on in the middle of the night. I'm always whacked out sports. That thing is always on when I'm doing tornado warnings for some reason. And the funny thing is about it is you could see when the weather's moving in, that you can kind of tell on the Twitter timeline when people are grabbing their smartphone off the nightstand and they start replying to you, and they go, I just woke up, Brad, you know what's going on? And I would live stream, and I could just envision all of these viewers, some of them I don't want to envision, sitting in their beds with their iPad or their smartphone. It's pitch black in there and the blue light's shining on their face, and they're watching our live stream or watching our Twitter feed because it wakes them up in the middle of the night, and then their first instinct is to go grab their phone and get on Facebook and Twitter and see what's going on.
Yeah, and that kind of becomes, it's not even just when you have severe weather or ongoing tornado weather, but like last night, we had a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings in the northern part of our viewing area, but people had been told for at least 24 hours that there was going to be an overnight event. So, you're here, you better update on social media. You better get radar updates coming in every 30 minutes or so to let people know what's going on, if not to warn them, but just to let them know that, hey, you can go back to sleep. It's okay. You don't have to wake up every 30, 45 minutes to check your phone, that you can get a good night's sleep, that it's going to be okay. And so I think, in any side of that, I think it's really important that you do go to social media, because you're not going to be doing those live cut-ins if there's not severe weather.
Yeah, and that's so true. And I think I remember back early in my career when we were pushing weather radios heavily, and I still do. I think the NOAA all-hazard weather radio is great. With the alarm goes off, wakes you up. I remember having news managers tell me back then, like, oh, we shouldn't be doing that because it's competition. They always looked at it as competition. And I always say, no, this is an alarm clock for you to wake up and go turn us on. And in many ways, social media is like that as well. I mean, we've all seen the research, and people that are looking for weather information online, if they think it's severe, they are going to eventually go turn their TV on. So in many ways, it's a way to get people to turn into the TV when it's severe. But as Grant mentioned, there's a lot of times where it's not severe. It's just, in my neck of the woods, thunder and lightning in the middle of the night is a big deal. If you have kids and you have dogs that are sensitive to that stuff, a thunderstorm in the middle of the night is a big deal. And letting people know where it is, and especially when it's going to be over. I thought that's a good point you made, Grant, about I do this now all the time at night. Hey, I give the all clear so people can go to bed and not have to worry about getting back up or thinking something bad's going to happen, because I literally will have people that will stay up all night because they're so afraid of the weather until they know it's all clear. So you almost, the all clear sign is almost as important as the warnings nowadays.
Yeah, it really is. And Brad, a perfect even I do it when I see a tornado warning issued. I'm going to try to pop on a live stream of somewhere, on a computer, if it's around here or if it's out in Oklahoma or wherever it may be, because when you get that weather warning, as just a regular individual, you want to find out more information about it. So I agree with the weather radio. I have the weather radio on my cell phone now, so when we ever get the alert, it rings it off and stuff. So I agree. It's really good for everyone to have that weather radio. It may be annoying at times when it goes off for surrounding areas, but it's a great tool to have.
It's the power of threes. I think I posted this on my Facebook page. I always think people need at least three minimum sources for severe weather information, because one may go back down, one may not be as good as the other. It's nice to have three, and that can include TV, radio, weather radio, social, a text alert. I'm a firm believer in that you need at least three sources of severe weather information just to cover yourself.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about after the fact. I guess we're kind of going to gear this episode towards severe weather instead of the everyday kind of aspect of social media with weather, since we seem to be rolling on that topic. Let's go to after the fact and how social media plays a role, after the fact, when we have damage or people want confirmation of something that occurred. Talk about, first off, Brad or Grant, the immediate hour or so after a tornado, what you usually get, what type of questions you get, and then in the days after, perhaps for the response and the recovery from some type of severe weather event.
Initially, after, we'll just use maybe tornado, for example, it seems to me, tornado touches down, or at least there was funnel cloud reported. So you've got the pictures that are going on. You've got all the damaged pictures of the downed trees. You may be damaged to a house or something like that. The thing that's really difficult is that, again, social media and pictures and information move so quickly that the public wants to know, was it an EF1, an EF2? Was it confirmed a tornado, or what the heck was it that came through my neighborhood? And that becomes, I think, the real difficult element right there. Is we need to sit there and wait and get the National Weather Service out there to survey the data or the damage and to analyze what actually happened. And then so we sort of become that buffer between the community and the National Weather Service and say, hey, look, there was damage. Here's what we know, here's what we saw, but we can't be completely 100% certain until we get that data analyzed. So I think that really becomes, that buffer period, probably sometimes a whole day before we really know. And that's where you really just come down to kind of just, deciphering all that information, all the pictures, and just trying to make the most sense of it. And then you just say, hey, look, it probably was a tornado, but we don't know for sure.
I'll unmute myself. I think what happens just after is kind of interesting, because in many ways, Twitter, I kind of refer to Twitter as a Twitter Doppler sometimes in these situations. Like yesterday, when I'm seeing the circulation on radar, and I'm not seeing immediate feedback from followers of damage or pictures, I kind of feel like it's confirming that nothing's happening, because in this day and age, it's like, if it's going over a populated area, somebody's getting a picture of this thing, or they're at least sending me information on it. So a lot of times in the real time and just right after, if I'm not getting a lot of information from my followers, I'm almost thinking, okay, there's nothing going on. I'm kind of backing off. But as Grant mentioned, a lot of times you get a little bit of the opposite, where you get an overabundance of tree damage or damage, and everyone thinks it's a tornado. And people like taking pictures of scary clouds, and every low-hanging cloud is a tornado. Yesterday's a good example. A lot of the still pictures looked pretty crazy, but the video to me is really more important, because you can make a cloud look like anything in one frame grab, but if I see rotation in that cloud, it's a much different story. So in many ways, if I was going to put out a plea to my followers and my viewers, is try to do video whenever you can, even if it's a short Vine video or Instagram video, because that movement is really key to whether it's a tornado or not. A lot of roll clouds, shelf clouds, scud clouds, low-hanging clouds, they all look scary. It doesn't mean they're severe. So a lot of times we get these damage reports, and I see more damage reports and no actual pictures of a tornado. And I think what happened with the McDowell tornado that got confirmed today is kind of interesting. I don't know if that would have ever been confirmed if it wasn't for social media. I think the reports that came in from McDowell County probably forced the hand of the Weather Service to go take a look at that, and then go kind of time it out with the radar data and say, hey, yeah, something did touch down there. So I think a lot of the feedback we get from our viewers on social media might spur survey teams and damage assessments that probably wouldn't have happened in the past.
Brad, do you have a good story, speaking of your Twitter Doppler, of the Harrisburg tornado a couple of years ago? That was something that wasn't even warned. I think you actually realized it first on social media.
Yeah, that I could have done a case study for social media being the savior in that situation. Obviously, that's a kind of a highlight event for the Charlotte area. You know, EF2 touches down at, I think, 2:35 in the morning. Very similar setup to last night, by the way. The only difference was we had a pretty strong wedge over the Carolinas, and that a squall line just like last night came up and intersected with the CAD boundary, the cold air damming boundary, and we had an EF2 tornado spin up in the Reedy Creek area just south of the university area, UNC Charlotte. And no warning. We're not a tornado warning, not even a severe thunderstorm warning. And I was watching it the whole time, and I actually did a cut-in based off of what I was seeing on Facebook and Twitter, and primarily Twitter. This was a Friday night, so there were a lot of students in UNC Charlotte area that were tweeting me saying, hey, we just lost power, or the cable just went out. So I didn't know initially it was probably a tornado. I knew there was damage occurring, at least from wind, because of the reports I was getting on Twitter. So I cut in and said, hey, you know, we've got damage reports coming in. There's probably severe weather. And I think while I was on the air, a one volume scan of the terminal Doppler, boom, there was a couplet right there. And so I think we got a tornado on the ground. We're getting damage reports. We stayed on for a while. And then the storm actually got warned for a county over from the Raleigh market, the Raleigh, not the Raleigh market, but our market, the Raleigh Weather Service office. It was actually Stanley County. It wasn't even Cabarrus County, which is the next immediate county over. There was a tornado warning issued for Stanley County. And the funny story behind that is the reason that warning went out, the forecaster on duty that night at the Raleigh office, his mom lives in Harrisburg. And he was on the phone with her saying, hey, this looks like a bad storm coming. And the phone cut out when they were talking. And so he pulled the trigger on the warning based off a conversation with his mom in Harrisburg, because he assumed that meant that there was some kind of damage occurring. So that was an interesting event from a social standpoint and from a bureaucracy standpoint, because GSP and Raleigh didn't really work together very well on that. I think they would admit that. And being at 2:30 in the morning, if it wasn't for those tweets from students over there telling me they lost power and they lost cable. I mean, not just power. They lost cable first and then power went out. I knew there was damage occurring. And then wake up the next morning. I think I didn't wake up. I stayed up, I think, most of the night because we took our helicopter over. And to see those pictures of the houses destroyed and the kid gets blown out of 45 from his bedroom, which is unbelievable. So, I mean, that was really a success story for why Twitter was really important in that situation.
And another thing I wanted to bring up, after the fact, I always go back to April 27th and some of the success stories from that event. And Brad, I know you've done a little bit of research into social science, and you have talked to Dr. Laura Myers a lot and some of the people down there at the UAH Huntsville who did the research on the trajectories of some of the damage based off of Facebook and social media, correct?
Yeah, she's got a pretty good study. I don't know if she's published it yet. I think I read the abstract that Dr. Myers put together based on Facebook reports, not only damage and pictures, but also where debris. This Facebook page was started up after the Tuscaloosa tornado of people who found debris that was basically from Tuscaloosa. So if you found a check or a picture and trying to reunite this stuff with people. And she's using that Facebook page to basically kind of reconstruct the path of the tornado through social media, and it's really fascinating event because there's a lot of things about April 27th that are interesting, but the probably the most interesting part is how the morning severe weather knocked power out to a lot of people in northern Alabama, and a lot of them didn't have access to TV at all. And social media was their only source of severe weather for the tornado outbreak, which occurred that evening. So Facebook especially became really important. One of the interesting things that I found out, and I kind of think about now more than ever, is how big Facebook is in rural communities. Communities you would think that aren't very social media savvy. You come to find out every farmer and every pig farm in eastern North Carolina, even, these people are on Facebook. They're using it. And Facebook became really important as a way that people got information in the little afternoon outbreak. Now, that's also why since then, a lot of things have changed with Facebook, and why a lot of us in the broadcast industry get frustrated with it from a weather standpoint is the whole newsfeed algorithm and how we can't reach everybody all the time. But there's a lot of interesting information that came out of that event, and I think the one thing that stuck with me the most was just don't underestimate populations and demographics for their use of social media. They're probably using it a lot more than we give them credit for.
I think another example of using social media to get information after the event of the storm, this past winter when we had the big snowstorm on February 12th and 13th, you have your metro reporters that are going to give you your snow reports in like the Greensboro, Winston-Salem, High Point, that kind of stuff. But we had some social media reports that came in up in Boonville, way up in parts of western Yadkin County, up in that area. And it was those reports with pictures, because pictures is going to tell a much better story than, just, hey, yeah, I had so much inches. And those were the reports that actually eventually got back to the National Weather Service to really paint the fact that some places in the western part of the Piedmont, the foothills, had close to 20 inches of snow. Whereas, most of your regular reports were just somewhere around 9 inches of snow. So, I mean, it also plays that way, too, where, you're going to get reports that you weren't going to get any other way.
Yeah, kind of. Sorry, go ahead, Ricky.
Go ahead. You're fine.
I was going to say, kind of with that, I've noticed it, and Brad, you probably know this figure, and I know Joey has because we've talked about it, is the Greenville-Spartanburg region has been marked as one of the top 5 most severe regions in the country just because of the storm reports. Yeah. And I was want to ask you, how has social media and social science contributed to facts like that throughout the United States?
I absolutely believe that's the reason that we have been a hotbed. I mean, there's population bias, first of all. We have a pretty big corridor population from Greenville, Spartanburg, Gastonia, Charlotte, Concord, Hickory. I mean, we have some pretty large population centers in the Western Carolinas, and I think the map you're talking about, basically, based on a number of reports, this area would be the severe weather capital of America because of the amount of reports we got. But I think it has a lot to do with the population and the use of social media. The Weather Service office in Greenville-Spartanburg has been very good about mining social media for storm reports. And so I think the active social media meteorologists in the Western Carolinas have helped contribute to that because we're getting tons of reports that they would never see before, and we're sharing them, and they're monitoring our feeds. And so they're getting a lot more verification of warnings and also just more reports in general. And let's not forget the science part of this is, as a forecaster, you want to verify your forecast. And Grant brought up that snowstorm is getting these reports. It makes you go back and look and say, okay, this verified, this didn't verify. You're probably saying, well, why is that important? Well, it's important for us because, one, we got to figure out what we did right and what we did wrong so that the next time an event like this comes along, we can get it even better. So those reports are really important. It's crowdsourcing science at its truest form, if you think about it. Getting this information, whether it's an app like MPIG or it's using the barometer now on the iPhone 6 or on the Galaxy 5, Well, the 5 doesn't have the thermometer anymore, but the 4 did, and you could crowdsource this information. It actually could become very valuable in the long run to help out the science of forecasting.
Yeah, and go ahead, Joey.
No, go ahead, Scotty.
I was just gonna say, and Grant, do you? I know you're in the Raleigh market, so and I haven't honestly looked at the stats up there. Is that something that you find similar to us in the GSP markets?
Well, yeah, we're actually just west of Raleigh. We're in like the Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem market, and it's interesting. I don't think that the use of social media is as high here as it is down towards GSP, the Charlotte area, and even so up into Raleigh. Now it's been building, but I will say that when I first got onto Twitter back in I guess 4 years ago or so now, whatever it was, it's grown. But when I first got on, it was like you would send out trying to find information, try to solicit severe weather reports or any type of weather reports, and it was really slow to come in. Now that's changing, it's getting better, but the reports that we're looking for, I don't feel like it is as great as it is in other parts of the state. But it's changing, and I feel like with every weather event, there is definitely an uptick in the usage. I mean, just yesterday I had more interaction on social media than I did just maybe a couple months ago. So I think it comes in waves. You have to have a weather event for people to really kind of jump on board. And so unfortunately, if you have more weather events, you're going to have more interaction and more reports. But in this case, I think that we are a little bit less interactive here in the Tri than we are down towards you guys.
That's actually an interesting point, Grant, because we talk with a lot of colleagues in other parts of the country, and some markets are more Facebook markets, some markets are more Twitter markets, some are Instagram markets. I mean, it really varies by location, and I would agree with that. I think Charlotte is obviously everyone's kind of a Facebook market, but this is a very Twitter savvy city, and I think it has a lot to do. There's a lot of tech and there's a lot of banking here. So it tends to lend itself towards that, and I think the Research Triangle in Raleigh probably lends itself to that. I think when you get into other cities like out west, I know a lot of Facebook markets, especially in the plains, where Facebook is kind of the way to go, and Twitter is just now catching on. I think Twitter is a fast-paced urban kind of social media, and Facebook's a little slower and laid back. So I mean, it sounds weird, but I think Facebook is more of a rural of social media, and Twitter is more of the urban social media. And more and more, I think Instagram is growing really rapidly, and all this, especially because that was really big with the younger demographic, and as they mature and get older, it's really coming up. And people love pictures. I mean, pictures people love, and the thing about Instagram, it's a very vanity-driven social network, so a lot of people are on there taking selfies, but it's great that sometimes they turn the camera around and take pictures of the weather. It's great.
That's the interesting thing about Instagram, Brad. I'm trying to break into that whole market of Instagram, but it's kind of a one-way conversation with Instagram. And so that's kind of the trick, at least I've seen, is how do you get people to share your post or be a part of that conversation when it's not really a two-way street. So it's like you get people, do you have them tag their friends, or do you want them to tag you? And that's really been an interesting experiment here recently.
Yeah, Instagram for me has been interesting. You're right. It's a lot of just mining other people's feeds, and but more and more I'm starting to get people starting to tag me on pictures, which is great. But I find on Instagram that you got to pay attention to what's going on in the comments of these pictures, because it's like you could take a picture of something and the conversation in the comments goes way off the rails. It goes into something completely opposite of what the picture was. So you almost have to read down the comments, because that's where it seems the conversation is happening more and more in the comment section. But you're right. I wasn't a big fan of Instagram at first, because I'm a photography buff and I hate filters, especially when it comes to weather, because people can really mess up a great weather picture by throwing a horrible filter on it. But it's grown on me, because I do like pictures, and I do like photography. So the amount of sharing on Instagram from DSLR cameras back to Instagram is pretty hilarious. I find a lot of Instagram accounts where I don't think the Instagram app is ever used to take a picture on their Instagram feed. It's always another camera.
Kind of switch gears a little bit. We talked a lot about the good things that social media has brought to weather. and we can't have a show without mentioning the bad side of that also.
There's nothing bad. We talk about Joey.
I'm not running any of that myself. But anyway, we got to mention it. I mean, I know we know there's a lot of big stories out there and things that we've seen. I mean, let's just talk about maybe something a little bit more local. I mean, what are some of the bad points of social media?
Where do we start? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Book this for another hour, guys.
From a weather standpoint, I'll tell you the one thing that I think is, I like listening on social media. If I had to give one piece of advice to anybody, is sometimes as broadcasters we get overly self-involved. I mean, let's face it. It's kind of an egotistical driven industry. It is about our face and about our personality. The one thing about social media is you got to be careful. Just make sure you're not always broadcasting, and sometimes you have to listen. And sometimes it's hard to listen when it's critical. I mean, when people can be mean. And some people on Facebook and Twitter, obviously they're just trolls. They're being mean to you. But sometimes there's constructive criticism to get back. So I think you got to listen to the people just as much as you're broadcasting. But the one thing that I do that does drive me nuts is people spreading false reports. Because when there's severe weather like yesterday, you want to speak with one clear, concise, and calm voice. And while I understand they want to post a picture and say, "Oh, this tornado is moving right through Hickory," and I want to say I will hide or delete their post, not because I don't want to see that, but because I don't want the other people following me to see that and get freaked out and think, okay, there's a tornado when clearly it was a scud cloud or something else. People like to share other forecasts on my page. I love looking at other people's forecasts. But on my page, I want it to be consistently my voice. I don't want to cloud the judgment of other people. So people want to post other people's forecasts and the Weather Channel and AccuWeather forecasts. They want to all compare things. That's great. I'll do that in a private message or an email, and we can do any of that. But on my page, it's so public that everybody can see those comments and see those posts. I want it to be consistent. Like, I'm going to live and die by my forecast. I may blow it, I may get it right, but it's going to be my forecast that I blow, okay? So I try to remove that. And then there's just the overall negativity. Facebook tends to lend itself to this more. People think they can hide behind a keyboard and just be flat out mean. Trust me, I'm okay with criticism. If I blow it or I suck at something, I'm okay with you telling me. I get a little offended when it becomes personal or it becomes ill-informed. And just yesterday, just for an example, not that this person was overly bad, but they sent me a private message saying how horrible our iPad app was and how inaccurate the maps were and how inaccurate the radar was. And they sent me a screen grab of the app, and it ended up being an app from another station. And so I said, yeah, you're right, that app is horrible. No, I said, but I had to sit there and go, if you're going to criticize me, please get the information correct first of all. I've had just old school phone calls. People call and chew you out, and then they say, why did you interrupt, some show? And I realized that show's on CBS or that show's on ABC. That's not on. They called the wrong station. So I just think if you're going to go off on somebody, please have the facts before you get in there.
You're going to get a phone call from me next time you interrupt whacked out sports, just so you know.
It's interesting because with social media, and like Brad was saying, you really want to make sure that, on your Twitter feed, you're getting your voice out there, but inevitably, somebody's going to get information from another voice. They're going to get information from their Facebook feed. They're going to get something that they heard in the grocery store, and it's going to be wrong. I mean, it's going to be flat out wrong. And it really becomes a chore to, especially when you're faced with a difficult forecast, whatever type of weather, whether it's winter weather, severe weather, or just, chance of rain. You're going to have to take time to, first of all, try to decipher what's actually going to happen, or at least your best guess at a forecast to try to make some sense of, a complicated situation. And then you have to spend time trying to silence, something that is so far off. And that really becomes difficult because once the cat's out of the bag, it's out. I mean, you talk about, your European model 10-day snowfall forecast. Once that's out there, once that puppy's out on the Facebook wires and you've got retweets and shares and all that kind of stuff, that's going to eventually come across your desk. And whether it's a viewer or my boss, you're going to have to explain that. And that's a difficult thing to try to bring back in. And I think, like Brad is saying, the best thing that we can do as meteorologists and people are on social media is just clearly communicate the forecast that you have. And if you get caught up in, barking back and forth and trying to point fingers and all that, it's just going to create more confusion, because then they don't know which direction you're pointing the finger. So if you can clearly communicate your forecast and explain why you're forecasting that, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have a kind of to add on to that, and we'll call it passing the Brad and Grant test. Is we've all seen the big monstrous 10-day snowfall totals or the monster hurricanes and stuff like that. As a meteorologist professional as you guys are, what is the test that a local person or just an average person needs to look at for the forecast to think, hey, this is legit, or this is not even legit at all? I mean, what would you give? What kind of advice would you give the viewers tonight for those forecasts?
Oh, I think it's really easy. Here's my face, my email address, my name is everything. There has to be a person behind that forecast that you can contact immediately, not have to go through a blog and look through a contact. If there's not a face and name and immediate contact, there's something fishy there. And if that person doesn't reply to you in a pretty short order, there's something fishy about it. That to me would be a red flag. The other thing is it clickbait? Is it someone just trying to get likes and shares? Is it realistic? We run into this time all the time in the winter. In the most extreme forecasts, it rises to the top, unfortunately. And we know, statistically, as a forecaster, there are outlier events. They're high and low, but usually the majority of the events are in the middle. And a good forecaster is probably going to, once in a million chance of forecasting an outlier. I mean, you really have to have a lot of information to get an outlier. So to me, if you see an extreme event, I would want confirmation from other meteorologists that are in the same ballpark, are going to confirm that. The other thing is that I think is a red flag a lot of times is just the sourcing. Not only have to be a person, but what's the person's track record? Do you have any relationship with this person? Is this someone who shared it from a friend, who shared it from another friend, who shared it? I mean, the thing that I take pride in my social media work is I like to communicate back and forth with as many of my followers as I can, so that they know I'm there, they know I'm working, they know I respond to them, and so that you build a relationship. So my word of advice is the information coming from someone you have a relationship, or is it coming from a complete stranger? If you don't know that person, I wouldn't trust them until I got to know them better.
I think you also want to look at, how these people have responded in past events. Because look, meteorologists, we're not perfect. We're not going to get it right 100% of the time. There's going to be botched forecasts. It's going to happen. It's the way the science is. It's the way the weather is. But if you have somebody who constantly says, I was right, I'm always right, over the last 6 times I nailed this forecast, that's a red flag for me, because I will sit there and, like I said, I have a couple of phone calls to make to people over the next couple of days, kind of talking about last night. But that's the thing. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to tell you what happened, what went wrong, and really what we saw, or maybe not what went wrong, but actually what happened, because the nature of weather is that things will change. The forecast is difficult. So if you have somebody who is putting up these posts that makes it sound like they are the most accurate person, they have the best forecast, or their company has the best forecast all the time, you got to question that, especially when you're looking at something that has a post like winter 2014 will be the worst ... and there's no more headline.
Yeah, you can't oversell it. I think that's a really good point. I agree with that, because I tell people all the time, I said, I leave everything I post online. I mean, my blog, my forecast, because you can go back and call me out on it. But the great thing about it for me, I do this partly for my protection, because when I do get it right, I can go back and say, hey, look, I posted about this 2 days ago. This is what I've been saying. I don't delete anything for that reason, because it can burn me, but it also can be my verification for what I was saying. I'm okay with getting it wrong once in a while, and I'm like you, Grant. I'll fully admit it. I'm not going to get it right all the time. Mm-hmm. The thing that I find with a lot of these posts is it's always ultra competitive. Like, you shouldn't go anywhere else but this source. They want you to be like, I'm the only source that's going to give it to you straight. And those always crack me up, as if I'm sitting here at home thinking, I'm going to withhold information from people because I don't want to get it right. I mean, I see this a lot with severe weather, like, oh, you broadcast guys are always holding back. I'm like, no, we're not holding back. I'll tell you exactly how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I like to get it right. I don't want to be first or most extreme. I'd rather get it right. So I'm not going to forecast 14 inches of snow 7 days in advance. I'm just not going to do that, all right? Because I know statistically the chances of that happening and the accuracy of that forecast is tiny. It's less than 1%. Now, if I get 3-4 days out and my confidence grows about 30% or 40%, now we can start talking. But usually I ramp things up because the confidence grows and the data increases. So I think that's a good point. I just think, you know, people that think this is ultra competitive and that there's only one source for information and I'm always right and you shouldn't go anywhere else. It's just not the way it is. We're all in the same. If you're a good forecaster, a professional forecaster, you should all be in the same boat. The information is the most important thing, and everybody wants that severe weather information to get out there. It shouldn't be as competitive as some people make it out to be.
I will admit this when I do a forecast. If I look at my forecast, and I always follow Brad, your forecast, a lot of other people's forecasts. If I look at mine, I look at yours, and it's way off. I double check myself. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if I'm that much different than, or the National Weather Service, whoever, if I'm that much different than anybody else, I'm gonna say, wait, you know, why am I thinking something different? But yeah, and another thing,
Joey's just won't clickbait. Don't let him fool you.
Yeah.
click on me. Anyway, yeah, another thing I was gonna say about, you know, finding somebody who is a legit, you know, their forecast is legitimate. A thing that I look for is if they're going to tell you their confidence level in a forecast. If it's 10 days out and they're saying we're getting 14 inches of snow and then that's it, I don't usually trust that. But they say we could get 14 inches of snow because, but it might be, you know, if they and they tell you, you know, how confident they are and things like that. That's something. That's a good thing to look for to know if you're dealing with somebody legitimate or not.
Yeah, that's why I'm a big fan of those ensemble forecasts. You got.
Uh-oh. Lost him. I'll kind of pick up. I'll just kind of go off of that, you know, because when you're talking about confidence, that's a real part of forecasting. Is there's an element of confidence that's always going to be there, and that's one great thing about social media is you can actually go into more detail about your confidence and where you are in that forecast. You know, on TV you only have 3 minutes to talk about something, which sometimes you need about 10 minutes, but you can really take that extra, you know, time needed on social media to express that confidence and be willing to say, look, you know what, I'm not confident in this forecast and I'm okay with that because that's the way that it is.
Yeah,
and Grant,
I got chopped off there, guys. Sorry about that. Those hackers from Russia. No, what I was saying is I kind of picked up what Grant was saying there. I think it's a confidence thing. Everybody who wants to ask me, you know, why do I think this? I'm completely comfortable telling them why I think this is going to happen and why it might be different than somebody else. And I'm always grading myself. When you bust the forecast, you're always looking to see why you busted so that in the future you don't bust like that again. And a lot of times, especially with a winter weather forecast, if you see a high-end forecast, you got to understand that the probability of that happening is just as likely as the low end of that forecast. So I like to see that range. Like, what's your low-end confidence versus your high-end confidence? And usually it's going to be somewhere in the middle. It's rare that you get that high-end total without telling people that equal chance of the lower total is just as likely as that high total.
Yeah, and we're closing in on 9 o'clock hour, so we'll kind of start wrapping up. But one thing that I would like for us to discuss a little bit about, Brad, you said get at least 3 to 7 ways to get your information. And one thing I love that you do, and I'm not going to lie, we copy it a little bit at Burke Weather, is actually do the video updates and the detailed forecast. I mean, it may be 5-6 minutes, but you really do a great job at describing this is what the elements are, this is what could take place. So maybe you and Grant could talk about the importance of, you only get 3 minutes on TV, but if you kind of tune in on a video, a YouTube post. I know Grant and Tim do Google Hangout stuff in the Greensboro area, and Brad, you do the videos on your Facebook and stuff. So kind of talk about the importance of those videos.
I think they're huge because you do them, and it gives you an opportunity to explain yourself a little bit more. and kind of lay out the factors, like this event that came out yesterday. It's like, here's the high end, here's the low end of what's going to happen, but here's the ingredients I'm looking at. And if we get more sunshine, we're more worried about supercells that have the main line. If we don't get more sunshine, then we're worried about the squall line, which could have embedded tornadoes. It's nice because a lot of people need that information to help them, understand the forecast, because I think the what, the if, the whys of what's going on with the weather, a lot of people really are starving for that, and the internet and social media is just is a great venue to do that, to kind of lay out what's going to happen. And the other thing is, Grant and I have this problem is where we have huge markets we have to forecast for, and so our forecast on TV is really generalized to as specific as we can in 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 3 minutes for a whole market. The great thing about getting a YouTube video like that is you can break it down by county, or get down to like, okay, could happen for this area, but it won't happen for this area. So those have been really popular with people. The hardest part is trying to do them in 5 minutes is about as most as I think you should go, and 2 minutes is probably going to be better because people's attention spans are just not there. But for the people that want to see that information, it is useful.
I think they're important because people are trying to make decisions. That's why they tune in to watch the weather. I mean, certainly there's a good core of the community that are just a bunch of weather geeks, like all of us. But there are people who are trying to plan. Do they go to the park with their dog? Do they take their grandmother out for dinner that night? Or what are their decisions that they have to make? And some of them are big decisions. Some of them are having to decide on whether or not they're going to cancel a football game on a Friday night, or some of them are pretty small about just trying to figure out if they should go get the mail. But regardless, they have more information with those videos to be able to make those decisions. Now, I get phone calls sometimes where people are saying, "Hey, Grant, I have a doctor's appointment. Should I go to the doctor's appointment?" I can't make a decision for you, but I can give you the information that you need to be able to make that decision, and have the most information to make the best decision possible for you. So I think those videos are really good because not only do you have the information to make those decisions, but it's available for you in one place. You don't have to scroll through a feed and say, okay, here was the planning forecast. Here is the threat level forecast for severe weather. It's all in one place. You got it in 2 to 5 minutes, and then you can go about your day.
Yeah, I love the videos and the in-depth that you guys do in such a short amount of time. You get all the information and the variables, the different variables, because weather is all about variables. One thing could cause something else to happen. It's kind of like a domino effect. And then my last question, and I'll let Daniel or Joey kind of finish it up, is we were talking about the bad parts of social media, and yes, it is those way out there forecasts and stuff. But another thing that I think we all find ourselves in is Facebook, especially Facebook, kind of likes to limit posts, and that we get told all the time, well, I didn't see that post, or I didn't get that message. Why is that? And you try to explain, different social media companies do this, but that is a bad aspect. So maybe you guys want to talk a little bit about that, and how you need to maybe. I know Brad puts up a picture sometimes of how to get all his updates. Maybe talk about how the best way for everyone to get those posts that we need to see. You're on mute.
There we go. Yeah, Facebook has become an issue with that. It really is, because the worst part about the fact that your reach is limited is that most of your audience doesn't know that the reach is limited. Most people think they like your page, I'm going to see every single update, and they're just not. I mean, that's just not the way it works. And I'll share this graphic. I don't mind sharing this here, but this shows you the reach for types of posts on Facebook, and that column on the left is percentages. You can see if you post a link, only about 7 to 8% of your Facebook likes are going to see that. And this is if you have a brand page or a fan page. If you post a photo, same thing. Here's the interesting thing, and I think a lot of people underestimate this, just a simple status update, text only, actually at one point had higher reach than any other type of post. And now the reason video is becoming huge is because video gets the highest reach of anything on Facebook right now. And I think the reason that is Facebook obviously is in the business of making money, and eventually they're going to service ads on these videos. So they want to get that reach up there to as many people as possible. But the thing is, that's, in an ideal world, 20% of your audience sees a post. It's not a good thing if it's a warning. I want everyone to see it. So what I often do is I will post tips like put the push notifications on for my page, or add me to an interest group so I show up in your feed more, or just simply go to my page. I'm dumbfounded by people on Facebook that only go to their news feed. They never go to the pages that they like. I mean, it's just amazing to me that people don't go to the pages more to see other posts. And there's other great aggregate sites like Rebel Mouse, and other similar sites where you can have all your Facebook posts on a page that people can bookmark. So I think that's a good way to get the information out. But ahead of time, telling people how this works. Like, here's multiple ways for you to get my information. You can follow my Facebook page, my Twitter feed, my Google Plus page. You can go get our app. You can go to our website. I mean, there's multiple ways to get the information, but you got to tell people about that ahead of time or they won't know.
I think when it comes to breaking weather, you just leading into it, I think, and Brad, you do a good job of this, and it's a good reminder, I think, all the time, is remind your viewers, hey, if you want the most updated information, you probably should be either watching the television or scrolling through on Twitter, because unless you're actually sitting on somebody's Facebook page, you're not going to get that coming through. And I'll be honest, if I have to choose between whether I'm going to post something on Twitter or post something on Facebook, and I don't have time to do both, it's going to go on Twitter, and it's just that simple. And sometimes, it's just something as easy as, just severe thunderstorm warning without a picture, but that's where that information is going to be. It's going to be on Twitter, and you hate to choose, but there is more of a reach, and it is easier, I think, to post on Twitter anyway.
Yeah, and Twitter, a good thing about Twitter is it's got to be short and concise, because you only get 140 characters to put your information out there.
Yeah, I'm trying to get everyone on Twitter, and I've told people all the time, the people I don't get it, or just get on Twitter. You don't have to ever tweet. Just people use it as a news feed of information. And most people, they're familiar with text. It's short bits of information. And in real time, I'm with Grant. I will post on Twitter first, because I just know more people are going to see it. And when weather's going on, I find out that more people are hopping onto Twitter and Facebook. I think the way most people handle now, Facebook is kind of like your setup to the event platform to get people prepared and heads up 2 days from now or day. And then when the things happen, and Twitter really is kind of the go-to location.
And there's one question, I don't know if you guys have the answer for this, and it's just something that I noticed last night, and I was talking with Chris White, the other guy I work with at Burke Weather. I noticed that our posts got more reach than they have in the past couple of months, and I don't know if it's Facebook as a company maybe knew what was going on in our part of the area and maybe kind of filtered through the feeds and posted more imperative information or not. I don't know if that's possible, but I noticed our post got so much more reach last night than it has in the past couple of months, even through other severe weather outbreaks.
I believe you, Scotty, because my reach has increased in the last couple of months, and I thought a lot of it was because I ended up getting a verified page, and so my page was getting suggested more. But I think, and you never know, the algorithm on the newsfeed is like, it's like it's a state secret. Nobody knows really what goes on. But I think what's happening, I think if there is an event like this, and weather is a big deal in the Carolinas, I think what you're probably seeing is everybody's posting about it, and so in those posts that people are seeing, there's probably suggested posts showing up more of other weather information. It might be suggested on the right-hand column, like, hey, go check out these posts about similar weather information. But I've noticed that too, and maybe it is a sign that Facebook realizes the public service that weather is on Facebook and is serving it to more people. But I honestly don't know based on what Facebook does all the time.
It may be a combination of things. It might just be, how, if people are looking for that information. So maybe you do have more people going to your page and looking at it and liking it and then sharing it. So it kind of becomes, an increase exponentially. But also maybe if there are, more people that like your page that are also posting about weather events, and so you've kind of been grouped into that category. Maybe that's how it gets the word out more. I don't know, but it is interesting to see your reach increase when there's no real reason for it.
Yeah, just like out of the blue.
I also remember when you get new likes to your page, those new likes are going to see your information for a little while before they start to drop off. So if you got 500 new likes yesterday, those 500 people probably saw, that was an extra 500 people that saw your post.
750.
Okay, 750. I still got 5,000 in one day, so catch up.
It was crazy. It was a crazy day yesterday. I couldn't believe how many weeks. All right, well, we'll kind of wrap up. I know you guys got TV promos to shoot, and Brad's got to get back to work. So, great discussion, and we may have to continue this on to another night. I know as the winter weather approaches, that we're going to have to go through all this again, and maybe we can transfer from the severe weather back to the winter weather and kind of talk about the social media impacts on that. So, guys, Daniel, Joey, I'll kind of, if you guys have any other questions or comments, something, I'll let you guys go, and then we'll let Brad and Grant kind of plug their social media, since that's what we've been talking about tonight.
I don't really have anything to say. As you see, I got here kind of late. Sorry about that, guys. But always, appreciate having our guests, Brad and Grant, and I'll make sure and catch up on this actually a little bit later on the archive. But, the one thing I've noticed is you're talking about social media. Could there be a day, I know we're not asking any more questions, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Could there be a day that, for you TV people, social media would be the primary, and then actual television would kind of be the secondary way of communicating?
Well, I tell you what, they're pretty equal right now. They're getting really close. The only thing that's holding back social more is that stations are having trouble monetizing it, making money off of it. But that solution is coming. People are going to make money, and I don't mind saying this. My boss would probably hate it, but I tell them all the time. I said, there's a chance that my YouTube video or a post I make on Facebook and Twitter on social is going to be seen by more people online than watch the 6 o'clock newscast. That's just, and it's not. It doesn't even matter if you're the number 1 or number 3, 4 station in the market. I could add up all the numbers of all the stations. It's the thing about social media is that it's not appointment television. The problem with television is people have to be watching at that time. I actually said this on the air yesterday during the tornado warning, because we had a tornado warning, 1 in the afternoon. How many people are home at 1 o'clock watching my station? I mean, honestly, it's not a lot. So I was telling people on the air, like, hey, I know this is not a huge audience now, but if you have friends or family in this area, send them a text. Tell them that there's a tornado warning, because there's times a day, no matter what station you're at or what program is on, you could likely reach more people online than you can on TV, just because it requires them to be watching the TV, whereas Facebook and Twitter, you could post something and they grab their phone or go to it later. It's always going to be there for them to get it whenever they go back to that source.
And and kind of go off of that too, with social media and Twitter, you're doing that you're doing it during the 5, 6 o'clock newscast, but you're also doing it every other time weather is happening. Of course, if there's a tornado warning, you're going to be on TV, but all those other 24 hours out of the day, if there's something that's happening that is relevant and people on social media are interested in it, and you have something to say, then yeah, that's where you're going to be going. And I mean, let's be honest, I think a lot of meteorologists out there are spending more time communicating on social media than they are doing in the broadcast. So, like you said, Brad, yeah, I mean, it's pretty equal for that time spent on TV and time spent on social media.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a numbers game. I mean, I tell people all the time, we don't get the severe weather at 6:15 when I'm on doing the weather. The weather happens whenever it wants. It happens in the middle of the night. It happens on the weekend. It happens on a holiday. And you have to be there. If your first job is a meteorologist, then you have to be there when there's weather. The second part of your job is the TV part. You got that whole TV thing hanging over your head where you have to be on TV. Sometimes my producers always want to produce the severe weather around the 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock news. And another nation. In the middle of the night, end up being on the weekend or on a holiday, sometime when you're not on TV.
And it's so true. I mean, sometimes it's like television gets in the way of social media. You sit there and you're trying to update something on social media or trying to have a conversation with somebody. Like, all right, Grant, you got 10 seconds before you got to go on air. You're like, gosh darn it, hold on a second.
It's interrupting your social media.
Exactly.
One thing I think social media has had a huge impact, and Grant, I'm sorry you don't work at NBC Charlotte, because we would love to have you down here. Social media has done such a great thing for NBC Charlotte. Brad, go ahead and tell. I love the commercial that you guys ran all
Yeah.
the time.
Well,
What has social media done for NBC Charlotte?
Well, I mean, it's been huge for us. We have now, I think, 350 spotters, first warn storm spotters, and we have a closed Facebook group, and we invite everyone to get on, and we try to train them, and we tout it. We run promos now saying we have eyeballs on the ground all across our area. In this day and age of technology, which I love technology, everyone knows I'm a big tech geek. I got my iPhone 6 right here. It came the first day it came out, but for weather, spotters are like still the most valuable tool that I have, and so we decided to recruit as many spotters as we can, train them, and put them into a group. And yesterday was a great case study for how well it worked for us. We had great pictures, great video. We put people on the air if we can do a phoner. Scotty's been on our air a couple of times doing walk and talks with his phone. He's done Skype for us. And that has been huge for us, and it really is a competitive advantage, because I feel like I can't be everywhere. I would love to have me be in every county, but you guys at Burke Weather and Catawba Weather and Call, you guys know that area. You're there. You can give me information better than anybody else in the Charlotte area, and I'll put you on the air here. And the people that are your neighbors and live up there, they know that too. So I want them to tune in and watch us, because I know I'm going to have your guys' reports on my air.
Yeah, it's been a great help, and I mean it's helped us a lot with Burke Weather, and Joey can speak for Catawba. And Daniel's technically out of the Charlotte market, but he still has a lot to do with the NBC, the first storm spotters as well. So, all right, Joey, Daniel, I'll kind of let you guys finish up, so Grant can get to do TV, and Brad can head back to the station. So.
I'm done. I got all my questions in. Thank you guys for coming on again tonight. I'm sure we got a whole list of topics, so anytime you see one that you want to be a part of, let us know.
Yeah, we're going to do the Carolina Wedgie, I promise you. I think we're going to do it sometime the first part of November, I think is what Ricky and I decided on. So, Grant, you have the Carolina Wedgie. It plays havoc up in your area, because sometimes you're way colder than we are. So
Yep.
We'd love to have you back on. And Brad, I know Brad's been wanting to talk about it too, so we're definitely going to have that on.
Yeah, let me know. I mean, that's something that is, it's a curse, but at the same time, it's really, it's why you do weather. It's why you're a meteorologist, because it's a challenge, but you get to look at it, and gosh, you can just pull every single hair out individually.
I see. I used to have hair, Grant, and then I moved to Charlotte.
Yeah, it's true. I'm well on my way myself.
Yeah, you're right, Grant. I totally agree. My biggest bust forecasts have always revolved around the wedge, but it's also the #1 reason I love living here. It is just like, as a weather geek, you just gotta love the challenge of forecasting that kind of setup.
Yeah, and it's not really called a Carolina Wedgie, but that's what we like to call it. So, anyways, all right, Brad and Grant, I'll let you guys plug your social media.
It should be.
Yes, it should be. It really should. I'll let you guys plug your stuff,
All right.
and then we'll kind of wrap up.
Yeah, I got to run. Everyone knows me on Twitter. It's WXBrad. On Facebook, I'm WXBrad, WCNC. Instagram, WXBrad. Google+. I'm even on Snapchat, if you're on Snapchat. I had a conversation with my anchors the other day. He didn't know what the heck Snapchat was. I had to explain it to him. But I'm on everything. Just WXBrad or Brad Panovich is usually the search term, and you'll find me on something.
Now you should have not told me that. I'm snapping you.
Add me.
I'm considering getting on Snapchat. Actually, I'm on it personally, but professionally, I'm still trying to figure out how that's going to work. We'll see. I feel kind of creepy asking for people's snaps. I don't know yet. Maybe I'm old. But anyway, on Twitter, it's at Grant_Gilmore. Facebook, it's Facebook.com/Grant Gilmore. I guess it's just Grant Gilmore, but pretty easy to find. My ugly mug's right there on the picture, so you can't miss it. But really, Instagram, I think it's Grant_Gilmore as well. So the same thing for Twitter and Instagram. Of course, something that always there. So you guys out there, even though you're not really dealing with our weather here in the Tri, I always love getting pictures of what's out that way. Because inevitably it probably will head towards a triad. So, getting your information is always great too.
Yes, I try to send Grant pictures via Twitter, but I have to attach the picture first. I think I did that last week, and I forgot to send the picture.
Yeah, I was like, man, that must be a great looking picture.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. Next week we have the week off, so we'll reconvene the last week of October because Ricky's going to be out in where's the conference at? Can't remember. But he's going to be at a conference. I'm going to be in Greensboro, hopefully hanging out with Grant one night. Yeah. And so join us back in 2 weeks. And thanks for watching the Carolinas Weather Group.
I say go.